I could not wait for fear to subside. And I think there's a lot of people that are standing on the sidelines of their own life, waiting for fear to subside before they step into the arena. And unfortunately,
It doesn't.
it doesn't. And action is what dispels fear. And a lack of action actually gives soil for fear to grow even stronger. And when we sit on the sidelines, fear gets bigger. It's like a monster under the bed. It grows the longer we ignore it. But when we take action, decisive action, specific action towards goals and dreams and desires, that's when fear starts to subside. But it doesn't start until we start moving through it.
Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Hey, thanks for checking out this episode. Be sure to click the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you get notified when the next video comes out. It only takes 2 seconds to make 2 clicks. So let's do it. Let's get back to the video. Hello, Fearless Freedom fam. This is Dr. G, and we are back for another exciting episode of the Fearless Freedom with Dr. G podcast. Today, we have none other than Chad Hufford, and he's here to talk to us about all kinds of amazing things. And so let's hear it from you, Chad. Tell us all about yourself and tell us about all the amazing things that you're up to.
Dr. G, it's a pleasure to be here and share a little bit about myself and what I'm doing, and hopefully empower and educate your audience a little bit. And I'm a financial planner by trade. I started doing this to help make sure people didn't run out of money in retirement. And what I've learned is that the job can be far bigger than that. It became more of a calling to make sure people didn't run out of purpose in retirement. So my job is to help people create a more abundant life. I do that through finances and helping people create a blueprint for their money, but also a blueprint, a plan for their life. And it's a pleasure and honor to be here and share that with you.
Awesome. That's a big mission that you're on right now. We're always curious about how do you even get into that? Like, how did you even decide to become kind of like a numbers guy, right? I mean, to be able to help people with this kind of thing.
I'm a coaching guy, and I love that you asked that question because I thought it was going to be more of a numbers thing. And my background is actually biochemistry. I have a degree in biochemistry.
That's cool. I have a degree in biochemistry, so I find that very cool.
I am all about the hard sciences, and actually was in pursuing medicine. And I was being mentored by several surgeons here in Anchorage, Alaska. And I met the woman who's now my wife and realized that she wanted a family and a husband and not a surgeon. Not that you can't be a great parent, a great spouse, and be a great surgeon. I just know how I'm wired, and I doubted my ability to balance that. And a couple of my mentors, one was he was an eye surgeon, did a lot of orbital reconstruction. Another one was a general surgeon, did a lot of trauma. And they both knew me well enough to know like that this is going to be a struggle for you. It's the way you're wired. It's going to be hard for you to leave time for family and relationships. And but I took a lot of that training and that background and also mixed that with some of my athletic background. And even though I have a lot of ability and maybe a natural tendency towards numbers and analytics, what I've realized, Dr. G, is that that's not what this job is about, because people make decisions emotionally. Like, that's the only way to get behavioral change, is to connect with their heart. Now, we often will make emotional decisions and then justify them with analytics and numbers and all that. But most people, no matter what career, no matter how smart they are, how educated, still make emotionally charged decisions. So my job, I realized, was more coaching. It was not just educating people to give them more information, because that's rarely what people need in finance or in life in general. It's changing behavior. So if educating somebody is transferring knowledge, I look at coaching is the application, execution of that knowledge. We've got to take this information and actually apply it to your life to get it working for you, so it doesn't just stay dormant. And I didn't realize that going into this. And I've studied a lot of performance psychology, and I'm grateful to have a background in athletics, because working with professional fighters, Olympic athletes, even some soldiers. I had a contract with the military to get soldiers ready for deployment, working with airborne units. And I studied a lot of this performance psychology that now I'm implementing into my financial practice, because it all goes back to retraining how we're looking at old circumstances and getting people to see old problems in a new light, so they can start acting differently and making a positive change in their life.
No, that's amazing. And so I'm curious now. I mean, you mentioned several things. So of course you had me at biochemistry, and then so to kind of walk us through it now. So you have this biochemistry degree, and you were looking at med school, but then you had some guidance from mentors, knowing you that maybe this might not be the best path if you want to have these other things as well, which is beautiful. I mean, that's like really good mentorship, because a lot of times mentors don't have that kind of insight to be able to really give you like the truth. So that was fantastic. And so now you're done with college or grad school. And then, so how do you get into coaching soldiers and preparing them and doing this kind of thing? Like, how did that happen?
Honestly, Dr. G, I think it was a God thing. Like, looking back, I can see how all these things lined up. At the moment, it just seemed very random. I started working with some law enforcement professionals, and they heard about some of the athletic training that I was doing, and I started creating a good name for myself here in Anchorage. So let me back up a little bit. So I'm sitting there with the biochemistry degree, wondering, am I ever going to use this thing? And I wasn't sure the direction and pathway I wanted for my life. I didn't necessarily want it to be in fitness coaching or working with soldiers or anything like that, but it was a way for me to pretty quickly get some cash flow built up. So I'm newly married at this point, and I enjoy doing it, but it wasn't something that I really knew how to scale at that point. And it was one of those, it was more of a job that I owned than a business, right? Like, if I wasn't working it, it wasn't making money. So it was kind of a short-term thing, but I really loved it, and it was important to me. And so I was working with some high-level athletes, like I said, Olympic athletes, some professional athletes, some professional fighters. I told my kids the other day, like, yeah, your dad's been beaten up by UFC fighters. That's pretty cool. But so then the local SWAT team heard about what I was doing, and they started getting involved. And then we have a couple of military bases here in Anchorage, Alaska. And then the military kind of got wind of that. And they said, we want to take what you're doing and apply that, getting people ready for deployment. We want to prepare their bodies, but also prepare their minds. Some of these guys have never been in combat before. And I was like, that's putting a lot on my shoulders, guys. Like, I mean, it's one thing to get somebody ready for the Olympics or get them ready for, a big fight, but getting somebody ready to actually go to war, that was pretty sobering. But then it prepared me, though, I think, to shoulder the burden I have now, where we have hundreds of families across the United States that rely on us for their financial independence. And that's a big burden too. So I really see that as a huge blessing to learn how to carry that burden relatively early in life, and to have people surrounding me that forced me to execute at a high level. And what's really cool, Dr. G, is some of those people we're still involved with today, even though that's not, there's almost like a past life.
Right.
Some of those soldiers we worked with, I'm still in contact with. And a couple of them actually even joined the local police department and are leaders within the SWAT team community. But yeah, it's been an amazing journey. And, here's what you and I can really resonate with and appreciate. Like a lot of times in life, when things don't go the way we think that they should, we view that as a failure. We view it as a setback. But with the biochemistry background, I viewed it as an experiment. I went into it thinking my hypothesis may not be correct. The outcome may not be what I was. So we're going to totally nerd out here. Just sorry, totally, audience.
Totally, that's okay.
But I had been trained for several years that you plan out this experiment. You have a hypothesis. You have an outcome that you're hoping for. But what you're really after is to learn as much as you can through the process. Yes. And I'm not saying that failure doesn't sting. I'm not saying that setbacks don't hurt, and they can be burdensome, but
absolutely.
But it wasn't. I didn't look at failure as final. I looked at it as an opportunity to learn from those setbacks, from those distractions, from those detours along the path that I thought was laid out for me. But really, I learned, I think, more from the detours oftentimes than I did from the path itself.
That is great. And then I'm sure that there was some time that you were afraid during all of that. Was there any fear involved, or was it just kind of like, it's going to go down this route, since that's kind of where we're being guided now?
So when I started my practice, it was 2007, and I didn't know it yet. Nobody knew it yet. But when the day I got licensed was within 3 weeks of the beginning of the largest financial meltdown since the Great Depression. Yeah, I had no idea. Nobody did. Yeah. So nobody
knew
all that. Yeah, nobody knew. And I'm glad I didn't. I probably would have figured out excuses to delay that. But I went into it, and I didn't have a client base. I didn't have any idea how to get clients. I was excited though. I had a lot of energy and enthusiasm, but I had a little baby on the way.
Right.
And we were entering the hardest investing climate that our generation has seen. And I was very, very afraid. And there was a lot of imposter syndrome. And I even was told, you'll appreciate this as well because of your background. So one of the medical school professors at University of Washington, I bumped into him one time up here in Alaska, and he said, "You're not supposed to be here. You should be in residency right now. You have no business being here." This was a few years later.
Oh, wow.
But to hear from one of my old professors telling me, you should be in residency, you should be a physician, like that just ignited the fuel of imposter syndrome so much more. So there's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of uncertainty. And I still feel some of that fear. I mean, even this whole podcast thing, putting myself out there, people like you keeping me on my toes with good questions. I think it's a perpetual process of keeping myself outside of a comfort zone, because the only difference between being in a groove and being in a rut is how long you stay there.
Oh, yes.
And I had a conversation a couple of weeks ago with one of my kids. He's 5, and he's had some nightmares, dealing with stuff little kids do. Yeah. And I told him, I was like, buddy, I need you to be brave. And he's like, Dad, I can't be brave. I'm scared. I'm afraid. And I said, buddy, it doesn't mean you're not scared. He said it's impossible to have courage unless you are afraid. If you're not afraid, then it's not bravery. What I need you to do is to still do the right thing in the midst of the fear. And that was a lesson I had to remind myself of over and over again. And I still do. So what I think this journey for me, Dr. G, has not been an elimination of fear, but it's creating a better relationship with fear.
No, that's fantastic. I love what you told your son. Wow. Yeah, no, that's very, very helpful, because I think people are always looking for, well, how do I go forward? I mean, I feel, because a lot of times fear will cripple people, right? It will be the thing that will stop them from moving forward and actually being amazing, right? Like, I mean, if you were to let fear stop you, you wouldn't be talking about what you do right now. Like, you wouldn't be in this space. You wouldn't have made the impact that you made. And honestly, like, yes, you can make a great impact as a physician. You would have probably definitely made a huge impact as a surgeon. But just think about how many surgeries could you actually do compared to how many people you can actually help in this venue. You know what I mean? And then you're not just helping them, but you're helping like their families, right? You mentioned it. You said earlier that, there are hundreds of families that you are responsible for, or you feel like you're partly responsible for, their legacy, like their financial legacy, their financial health. And that's a huge ripple. It's huge because it's not just the individual person whose portfolio is in your, is in your umbrella, but it's their family and someone watching their behaviors and learning from them, and so on and so on and so on. You kind of don't really make that kind of impact as a surgeon. I'm just gonna put it out there. So,
Well,
it's a very different thing. So, but you're right. We all have imposter syndrome. Like even the person who is the most elite at the top of their game feels it. So it's just like having that wherewithal, like you did, of knowing that, okay, that's fine. And maybe that might have been a path for me, but I am pretty sure this is the current path that I need to be on. So having that kind of like sense of self, it's pretty strong. And that's why you're successful, Hey, it's Dr. G, and I just wanted to take a quick moment to thank you for listening to this episode. I'm so honored to have you here with me. Did you know that I can help you to get your own podcast started? With my podcasting launch course for professionals, I walk you through everything you need to know about starting a podcast. I'm with you every step of the way, from sign up to launching your show, with 5 episodes ready to go. There's a done for you version that's also available. If you would just rather just do recordings and leave the behind the scenes work up to us, then that one is definitely for you. But either way, we've got your back here at Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Oh, if you already have a show and you need production services, we have monthly plans available for you. So check out the links in the episode show notes for more information. Let's get back to the show.
Well, I've been blessed to have a lot of good people around me, good mentors. And one of the things I learned early on is that I could not wait for fear to subside. And I think there's a lot of people that are standing on the sidelines of their own life, waiting for fear to subside before they step into the arena. And unfortunately,
it doesn't.
It doesn't. And action is what dispels fear. And a lack of action actually gives soil for fear to grow even stronger. And when we sit on the sidelines, fear gets bigger. It's like a monster under the bed. It grows the longer we ignore it. But when we take action, decisive action, specific action towards goals and dreams and desires, that's when fear starts to subside. But it doesn't start until we start moving through it.
I love it. That's great. That's fantastic, Pearl. I know the audience is like eating that up because, man, always looking for ways in which you can approach it, because it's like, I don't know, it's just so pervasive. And, a lot of times we are not taught as children, as we're growing up, to deal with it, because you mentioned something I thought was quite interesting. And, like how we deal with failure, it kind of like molds our direction, because you can approach a situation. Maybe you feel like you are destined to do a thing for your entire life. And then you get to a point where something gets in the way of you achieving that goal. And you see that as the ultimate failure. You are not going to do this thing. Or you could see it as, well, this is actually a lesson that teaches me maybe I need to develop in this area, and then maybe reapproach the situation, or maybe look at it a little differently, maybe practice it a little differently. Like, so that ability to be flexible in your mind is not something that we are taught unfortunately, growing up, because it's always like, I mean, I don't know what like your background is, but if you're a high achiever, usually high achievers are like, they're like results based, right? So it's like you go,
Mhm.
you do the test, you get the A, and you move on to the next thing. You're not like thinking I'm gonna get a B, because that doesn't really like enter your mind, because you're always shooting for that excellence. And so to have it a situation where you don't get that, or you actually have a quote unquote failure, your first thought is not thinking about it as a growth area. You're thinking about it as, oh my gosh, everything is like gonna fall apart. Everything else is gonna fall apart. Not that just this one thing just needs a little bit of attention. Like that's not how we look at it. And that's not how we teach our children. And so I think, and this is part of the reason why, like, I tell my kids, look, if you fail, it's not that you're not good enough. It just means that you just need to grow in that area, or you need to approach things differently. And I feel like that, like having that skill as an adult, it just allows for you to go farther, and it allows for you to like be better. I don't know. But that's kind of what I saw, like from my own having to deal with my own failures and getting around it, getting over it, walking through it. And then expressing that to them and telling them, look, mommy failed in this area, and this is how I dealt with it. You don't stop because you fail. You just keep going. That I don't think is a skill that is often addressed in childhood, and it's often, and it leads to, unfortunately, a lot of problems in adulthood. People have a lot of difficult time coping, and especially when they focus on only one thing. And if that thing doesn't come to fruition, they totally cannot deal with it, and they just totally fall apart. I see it. It's crazy.
No, you just identified so many things I struggle with, because you're absolutely right. Like when you're going through your undergrad, you're going through even research and other things like that, you get immediate feedback. And you and I, we both got used to getting good grades, and people kind of looking to us like, hey, if we can't figure this out, our main she could probably lay it out there for us, just as good as the professor, if not better. And I'll be honest, like there was some of that pride there too. I was being groomed and recruited to go to medical school, and I was thinking about, Dr. Hufford, that sounds pretty good.
Yes.
And my identity was
Sure.
getting wrapped up in that. And I was used to, it definitely wasn't immediate gratification, but I was used to measurable success. I could see it. It was clear. It was tangible. You got your grades, you got letters back, acceptance for medical school, or you didn't, but it was measurable. It was very clear. And I had to create a different way of counting wins. I had to count success differently, because in 2007, 2008, I mean, honestly, for the first 7 or 8 years, a lot of what I did, Dr. G, was jumping out of the bushes at people and saying, Dr. G, you don't know me. We were introduced by so-and-so. How would you like to entrust your life savings and your financial future to a complete stranger like me? I mean, that's essentially what I was saying. As you can imagine, there's a lot of rejection. I heard a lot of no's, and I did completely change how I looked at success and wins, because my progress was not as clear. It was not as tangible. And there might be weeks where I would talk to hundreds of people, get rejected. So I actually had to count my success as the number of people that I offered my services to, not the amount of people that made appointments, not the amount of clients I got, but it was the inputs. I had to count inputs as the win, not the outcome. That was a game changer for me. You said something else about failure, and we're not taught this as a kid, and it's not even human nature. Like, it goes against how we are wired. But are you familiar with Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx?
Very a lot on the periphery. I don't know the details of her story.
Okay. So she was the first female self-made billionaire. And I've not met her. I've seen her in person. I've heard her talk. She seems sweet and nice, but she's an absolute bulldog. She is.
Well, I think you have to be to get there.
And I mean that. Yeah, she is tenacious. She's sweet and tenacious. Got a great balance of the two. But anyways, one of the things that was super inspiring to me as a father is hearing her talk about her parents, and her parents were there. It was so cute. She's speaking on the stage. Her parents were like off to the side clapping for her like she was a little kid at piano recital. She's a billionaire. But her dad used to ask her when they were growing up, her and her brother, I think it was every night at dinner, or maybe just once a week, but what did you fail at? And she said he never was disappointed with whatever answer we came up with. Have anything. If we came to the table and we didn't have anything, he would say, Sarah, if you didn't fail at anything, then you didn't challenge yourself enough. You didn't push the envelope enough. And he actually taught them to be proud of setbacks, to be proud of what most people call failure, because he trained them to see that as a sign of them stretching themselves and then challenging themselves enough to at least flirt with failure. And sometimes you're going to slip over into the other side. But he reminded them that's okay. That failure doesn't define you. In fact, that's what that failure is going to grow you. So like her father took a very intentional effort to create in them a better relationship with failure when they're very young. And that's a huge part of her success. But I think a lot of us as adults never establish that relationship. And we live in fear most of our lives.
Yep. Yeah, no, that is fantastic. I love that he does that. I might have to try that with mine. I'm always looking for different angles to like to kind of like push them a little bit, make them more comfortable. Oh, that's fantastic. And then so yeah, no, I mean it's such a, and then I'm sure that you see this in your line of work now, because their money is like such a funny thing, right? Because you mentioned that we make decisions on an emotional basis, and everybody's relationship with money, there's so much psychology behind that, because like it can be your background, whether you came from a place of scarcity or abundance, like how you look at money, it could be like, I mean, there's so many layers to that, and how people are stewards of their money usually has a lot to do with like something deep rooted. So, like I know some people don't even realize this. Like they may wonder, well, why is it that I never have any money? Oh, because, maybe when you were younger, you were told that, you don't have to hold on to it. It'll come right back to you. And you just like spend money willy-nilly and you don't ever take a budget and all these things. I don't know. Or maybe you came from a situation where, there was never any money around. And so all you do is save, and you never allot an amount for you to enjoy life while you're saving, so those are kind of things that happens when people have like there's like a background or like a history of their relationship with money. And I just wonder, because I know that you heavily coach your clients. And I just wonder if you have to dig into like their emotions about money when you're dealing with them.
No, we get into it. We dig into it. And we try to do that fairly early on, because if I'm going to make somebody uncomfortable, not everybody wants that. Not everybody wants to be coached. Some people just want somebody to come in, take control, and it doesn't work, because we're talking about behavior change. You can give somebody better investments. That doesn't make them a better investor. Just like you can give somebody a better paintbrush. It doesn't make them a better artist. It's the person themselves that has to become a better operator of the tools you give them. You wouldn't want me in an emergency room right now. Like it's, you give me all the best tools in the world, I'm not a surgeon, so it's how we operate with the financial tools that we were given. We are the biggest variable. And some people don't want to change. They want somebody else to fix it for them. And finances is a team sport. You have to have a coach. You have to be willing to be coached. You have to have that teamwork there. And a lot of people walk around with a scarcity mindset. So one of the things that we do is really try to attach what they're doing to their future goals. Like, what do they want their life to look like if they never had to work another day? What would wake them up in the morning and would keep them dreaming at night? Like, who do you want to become? What do you want your life to look like? Where do you want to be? And attach what they're sacrificing for in the moment with something bigger than just not working. Because quitting work one day not having to go to your job, that's not compelling enough. So we try to make the goal bigger and more tangible and create this idea of a job optional lifestyle where they have the freedom and independence to do the things that they don't get a chance to do right now, but also working through some of those emotions of scarcity. Because again, a lot of people do have those money messages they grew up with of scarcity, and more money doesn't fix the problem.
No, it does not.
Yeah. So
it does not.
It's just like if you take somebody who's a bad driver, you give them a faster car, that doesn't solve
into a
their
worse
problem.
accident.
Exactly. You don't give your teenage driver a Ferrari and expect like, oh, he's going to be a good driver now, and it's the same thing with money. So a scarcity mindset is something that has to be worked on an individual basis, and something that it's an emotional process. And if you take somebody with a scarcity mindset, give them a lot of money, they actually have more anxiety because now they have $5 million to worry about losing instead of 50,000 or whatever the numbers are. It makes a bad problem worse. And it actually, I think, creates even more fear because people think that more money solves the problem. And then when they get it, it doesn't satisfy. And they're like, well, that was my only idea. So I guess more money, 5 million didn't do it. So I need 10 million. And they're chasing. It's like chasing a sunset or chasing the horizon. You're always going towards it, but you never actually get any closer. You don't actually see any progress. So the change has to happen within. And I'll just give you a short story. With myself growing up, we grew up. We were very privileged. My dad wasn't super wealthy, but he had a well-paying job. I had two parents that loved me, and we always had enough. But my mom used to rinse out Ziploc bags, and she used to wash paper plates and wash silverware. And I remember one time I was probably 9 or 10 years old, and she had these Ziploc bags that were holding raw meat because there's 5 of us kids. We were a Costco family. You buy it in bulk, you put it in smaller packages. So she had raw meat, and she rinsed out the bag, and then she put rolls in it. And again, I'm like 9 or 10. I don't know anything about microbiology. Like, Mom, something's not right about this. Like, I think Dad is doing a little bit better. We could probably throw away the Ziploc bag that had the raw meat. And for a while, like growing up as a teenager, I was pretty hard on my mom because she had such a scarcity mindset. But as an adult, what I've learned, Dr. G, what I've thought about is my mom was raised by Depression era parents.
Oh, yes.
Her parents saw their parents lose everything. Not only that, when my mom was a teenager, during some of the most impressionable years of her life, while she was trying to save for college, get ready to go to college, she did end up becoming a nurse. But while she was preparing for that, her dad, my grandfather, went bankrupt, lost a chicken farm and a dairy ranch, lost everything. So not only did her parents grow up in an environment where they saw their parents lose everything, my mom saw it too. My mom saw them completely financially devastated. And I don't think I appreciated that. And she still struggles with it, unfortunately. And we're trying to get her to grow out of that. But when you have those things happen, that type of financial trauma, you can't pretend like it doesn't exist. And more money, a bigger bank account, larger investments, that doesn't fix the problem. It has to start in the heart and in the mind.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's very compelling because I could see why she does that, why she did that. Wow. Yeah. Well, and then she probably didn't even realize how dangerous that was. I mean, you guys are fortunate you didn't get really sick.
No, I know.
It was very possible you could have gotten extremely ill.
We have really good immune systems now because
apparently,
we used to, some of them were just thrifty, but that was an extreme example. But we used to, my mom used to drive around town in a 1990s Suburban that got like 8 miles to the gallon, drive around town to try to save a few cents in gas. And it was just like, it actually worked against her.
Yes, because
but she was so afraid of money being spent unnecessarily. And again, it's that scarcity mindset. And a lot of people have that, Dr. G, and it's, they're so afraid of losing their money that they never learn to use it. They never learn to utilize money as a tool to build a better life. So that's a lot of what we do is not just giving people the tools, but changing their mindsets and perspective towards money, so money can build freedom and abundance in their life and not be another reminder of scarcity.
Wow. Yeah, no, that's like I said, when we first started, important work.
Yes.
Oh man. So now you have to tell everybody how they can, because I know that they're like listening to every word and they're really vibing with you. So you have to tell them now how they can get in contact with you.
Easiest way to get in touch with us is our website. It's veritasalaska.com. We also just in the last couple months started getting really active on Instagram and trying to every day put something up there that's encouraging, that's empowering, that helps people create not just a better mindset for money, but a better mindset for life and creating a better relationship with their future self. So they can follow us on there as well. And if you have questions, do not hesitate to reach out. We're happy to help.
And do you mind spelling Veritas just so?
Yes, it's VeritasAlaska. Veritas
Perfect.
Alaska.
Perfect. That is fantastic. All right, Chad, we're at that part of the show where we have our tradition. Are you ready? You ready for fill in the blanks? Okay, awesome. All right, so the first one is, if I am fearless, I will
continue to instill courage in others around me.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. The next one is, to me, fearless freedom means.
It means walking forward in the face of fear to a destination that is meaningful and important to me.
Awesome. 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 And then the last one is, my battle cry is.
You are the biggest variable to the success and failure of your life and ultimately the trajectory of where your life goes.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Chad, for spending time with us here on the Fearless Freedom podcast and with this Fearless Freedom tribe. We appreciate you sharing, you be vulnerable, and you dropping all the nuggets that you did. And I know that you're going to be getting some hits from this episode at veritasalaska.com, right? Did I get that right?
That's correct. Yes.
Awesome. 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 And then go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, well, thank you so much for having me. I've really enjoyed this conversation. It's been a blessing. It's been uplifting to me. So I appreciate you having me on and give me the opportunity to speak to you and your audience.
Well, we are glad to have had you on. Thank you for spending the time. Thank you for joining me on this episode of Fearless Freedom with Dr. G. Again, I'm Dr. G. And if you like this episode, be sure to subscribe so that you can get notified of when the next episode is going to be. And also, I'll catch you next time. Have a great one. Be strong, be brave, and unleash your greatness.